在英国，它也有一些人是就是来比如说他可以做一些影片，然后把他的头镶上去，然后他就可以在任何时间、在任何地点，就是加热演讲的，之类的这样的东西。但是这是少数的人，对大多数人来说，我们用这种说是我如何来处理挑战、面对挑战这样一种方式来思考 AI 它的意义跟功能，可能是更有帮助。
So if we take one of these challenges, I'm sure everybody in this room feels busy. We all are challenged by time constraints. And so if we can find ways in which AI can help us do things more quickly and efficiently and well, then that can be very useful. So certainly we can use generative AI, for example, to create content. We have to check it. I think we have to think of tools like ChatGPT as a very fast, enthusiastic assistant that doesn't get everything right all the time. So we always need to check, but it certainly can help save us time. And we can also use some of these other tools, Grammarly, cheating detection tools, virtual teaching assistants. We can use all of these different kinds of tools to help us address some of our time constraints. And the last one on there, virtual tutors, you'll see come up in different forms on different slides. I use that to make the point that AI is not always a technology that stands alone. It's often more powerful when combined with other technologies. So if we think about virtual reality and then we think about intelligent virtual reality, you can see how the combination of technologies can be very powerful. So we need to think about what AI can do, but also what AI can do when combined with other technologies.
好，那比如说我们在座的各位，可能每天都忙不得了，很想要很受到这个时间的被追着跑，说那很多的 AI 工具可以帮我们就是节省一些时间比如说 ChatGPT， 我们可以让它可以产生一些文本，它也可以很快的产生。那但是当然它不一定都对，所以我们要记得要随时要确认说它是真的是对的。那在这里面除了这个以外，还有很多其他。那他特别要提到最后这一项，等一会儿在后面他还会会有在提到的是所谓的虚拟这个家教。那这个虚拟教学的这个部分它事实上是用了虚拟实境的这些工具，然后但是它把它跟教育功能整合在一起。说我们事实上要看很多这个 AI 工具的潜能，就是要去看说，那这些工具它可以怎么样来整合来使用，可以来帮助。
But I must make the point that I don't think AI will ever replace human teachers. And I'll say a bit more about that later. Student engagement, again, we can have personalized learning resources, which can be more engaging for students if those resources are meeting their very specific needs. That can be very useful. Personalized learning parts, as I say, engaging AI in systems that use virtual augmented reality, and we're seeing those kinds of systems appearing on the market. Again, systems that combine gamification with AI and role-play tools. There are many ways in which AI can be part of the toolkit that we use to support student engagement.
不过他要特别强调的说是，他认为 AI 并不可能把全部就取代了老师的真人的老师。这个我想他强调说他要先说清楚。那然后就是在这里那个圈圈是代表他刚才前面提到的各种不同的挑战。刚才我们提到的挑战就是要能够去掌握时间等等。那现在的挑战是有关学生要怎么样让他更投入所以这里也有一个 AI 工具可以帮助我们让学生更投入。但是我们就说要很有效的来使用它。
And finally, I think when it comes to equality, again, we can start to use this capacity that AI has for personalization, for content generation, in order to help us meet challenges around equality. So you'll see the same kinds of AI tools appearing across these slides, but they'll be used in different ways to address different challenges.
在教育上，我们要透过教育来消除不平等，那其实很重要的，是我们很重要的一个努力的面向。然后同样我们可以看到很多的 AI 工具，而且可以看到这些 AI 的工具在刚才的几个不同的功能里面分别都有出现，反复出现。因为就是说我们在 使用这些就是工具本身在那，那我们可以用不同的方法，在不同的情况底下来使用的时候，它就会产生不同的功能。
And so that's a very brief overview of ways in which we can use AI to tackle challenges. But actually, this is the really hard bit, I think. And this is thinking about how the fact that we have these very intelligent systems impacts on what and how we need to educate people.
这个是他觉得最有挑战的部分，就是我们要怎么样透过这些工具来思考说，我们会如何以及教学生一些什么样的东西。
And I don't need to tell all of you, you know better than I do, that learning is complex. It's a very complex human process. Remember, I said right at the beginning that in 1956, the Dartmouth College group collected together, believing they could analyze all of our cognitive processes and build an AI system that would be able to do all of them. We still don't have that. So we know learning is very complex. I wrote this book it was published in 2018. It has a very young child on the cover, but it's not specific to young children. I wrote this book because I wanted to understand more about and to communicate more about human intelligence and how it's different from artificial intelligence. We've built artificial intelligence to do things that we consider to be intelligent, but they're not identical. And the difference is really important. And the book is now free. I've made it a free publication that can be downloaded from that link. That's the English version, I'm afraid. There is a version in Mandarin, but it's published by Cheers in Beijing, and that's not free. Sorry about that.
好，那就是当然他不用强调这个学习很复杂的。那1956年的时候，那个达特茅斯会议的时候，他们认为说我们可以分析所有的这个人类的那个认知的历程，然后接下来把它做一个机器，然后变成是那个 AI 的。到现在我们还没做成，可以知道学习确实是非常复杂的。那他写了一本书啊，2018年出版的。那这本书现在是在网络上可以直接 download， 他有把那个网址给各位了。那这是英语版，那它事实上有中文版，中文版是北京那边出版，但是那个就不是免费的。各位可以直接看这个。那它的封面上是有一个年轻的小孩，就比较小年纪小的小孩啊。但是事实上，那个书里面所谈到的不是只有讲一个小小孩的事情。那他在这个书里面就谈到说，那人的那个学习跟机器的学习，或者是人的智能跟就是那个人的intelligence 跟那个人工的智能有什么不一样？
It's impossible to summarize an entire book in one slide or two, but I will try my best to communicate one of the key things from the book. Now, your Chancellor stressed the importance of interdisciplinary education. And when I was writing the book, I read about human intelligence from multiple perspectives in order to try and get an interdisciplinary understanding. And I concluded that one way of thinking about our human intelligence that made it easier for us to differentiate it from our artificial intelligence was by thinking about human intelligence as having these different elements. So these are not separate intelligences, although the work of Howard Gardner, which does look at intelligence as being separate intelligences, was very influential in my thinking. These are not separate intelligences. The message is that our human intelligence is a complex web of interactions, and we can see these kinds of behaviors within our human intelligence.
好，那就是他在这个书里面主要就谈到说，人的智能包含了很多不同的面向。但是他强调说，这些面向不是个别的智能，而是它是一个网络，整体来运作。当然很难在很短的时间内把这整本书的所有的内容都讲清楚。不过他试着跟我们大家一起来分享一下这些不同的这些智能的运作的条件。那一开始的时候，那个吴部长也提到说这个跨领域学习的重要性。说在这边他也提到说，事实上我们对于那个就是 学术的这个智能的这个部分的思考，就是我们一般的传统的智能思考里面，其实它那个跨领域的特性也是蛮重要的。那然后在这里他有提到说，用它这个模式来看的时候，怎么样，它可以看出来说那个机器的智能，就是人工智能跟这个人的智能、人类的智能中间呢有哪些差异啊？但是有哪些东西是那个人可以做得到，机器做不到的这些事情。那另外他就强调说，这个东西它不是一个不能把个别来看。就是虽然说在这个哈佛大学的 Garner 他那个多元智能的概念，似乎看起来是把每一个智能当成是个别的一种来看。对他当然他前面思考有一些影响，但他要特别强调说，这整个的一个智能还是一个整个的网络在一起。
Thank you. Now, I've just been told I've got 2 minutes left, and I am not going to finish in 2 minutes, so I apologise for that. However, I will try to make it not too much more than 5 minutes, so that we have time for questions. But just to give you that indication. So I just want to say a brief thing about each of these elements. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see interdisciplinary academic, meta-knowing. That's not metacognition, that's about epistemic cognition. Understanding what knowledge is, where it comes from, what is good evidence that should make us feel confident in believing something to be true, something we all need a lot of at the moment. And social intelligence. Interacting with other people intelligently is what helps us learn. So we really need to be careful about that. On the right-hand side of the screen are what I call the meta-intelligences. And this is really important, because one of the wonderful things about our human intelligence is that we have the ability to be self-aware. We can be metacognitive. We can be meta-subjective. That means we can be aware of our own emotional intelligence and of the emotional intelligence of others. We can be meta-contextually intelligent, aware of our place in the world, our interactions with the environment, with different people, with different tools. That's something that's incredibly difficult for AI to do. We do it with ease. And then there's perceived self-efficacy. If we really have this sophisticated human intelligence, then we can be very self-effective in the world. We can set goals, know how likely we are to achieve them, understand how we can increase the likelihood that we'll be able to achieve them, who can help us, how we can learn. We can be self-effective.
好，那在这边他提到7个元素啊，第一个元素就是跨领域的那个就是学术的智能啊，那这个就是我们一般所了解的这个智能部分。那另外它有4个用了 meta 这个字啊，它是一种所谓后设的或者统合性的智能的部分。那第2项提到的说 meta knowing 呢是说是一种认识的，就是我们知道知识从哪里来，然后接下来那个知识怎么产生，历程是如何。那 meta cognition 这个部分，我想大家比较熟悉。meta subjective 是一种自我觉察的能力啊。然后这个 meta contextual 会强调说，我们能够很轻易的把这个我们所懂的一些东西，在不同的情境下、不同的情境这个条件底下，然后来加以应用。那这个东西要机器来做是非常困难的一件事情。那然后social intelligence 当然大家现在都是非常熟悉的，跟别人相互动的一个能力。然后最后这个提到的这部分就是所谓的 perceived self-efficacy， 强调是说我们就会帮助我们去设定目标，然后去找到方向去达成这个目标。这种能力可以帮助我们更精准地掌握自己。那所以基本上来说，这里有提到很多都是属于这种自我觉察、自我检视、自我监控等等这些能力，就是这些所谓它的 meta 的这些能力。那这个部分是目前人工智能的一个限制，就是说它没有自知之明。
And the important point about this slide is that those capabilities on the right are not accessible to artificial intelligence. We are starting to build metacognitive AI, but it's really rudimentary. We wouldn't recognize it as metacognition in a human. It's very, very rudimentary. So the important message here is that AI can do what was on the left very well, but it can't do what was on the right. That meta-intelligence is beyond what AI can do. So that's where we need to focus in our education and training systems to ensure that our students have these really sophisticated, cognitive, metacognitive, meta-intelligence thinking skills. And then they will complement what the AI can do.
所以就是说，在刚才前面的图里面的人右边的那个部分，都是 AI 没办法做到的，越是靠右边，它越没办法做的。所以从这个表上来可以看到 ，AI 可以做到的事情是那个传统智能那个环节的东西。那所有这些属于这个后设监控的部分，都不是 AI 目前可以做的。当然，我们现在开始要去做一些这个有那个所谓的后设认知的能力的那个人工智能，但是那个还在非常粗浅的阶段而已。
And that's really the most important point I wanted to make in this talk. So I will now speed up a little bit. The point I want to make on this slide is that we know that we lose our abilities if we don't use them. Whether we're talking about memory or navigation, our human brains will stop being able to do these things if we don't use them. So we need to be really careful what we offload to our artificial intelligence systems. Maybe we don't mind losing the ability to do something, but maybe we do. So we need to think really carefully. And I think the most important thing as a society we need to do is to work out what we want the AI to do for us.
那很重要的是，我们要能够思考，说是我们要 AI 今天要帮我们做些什么事，然后接下来我们要很小心的去思考，说是有一些东西如果我们不用它，那个能力会慢慢减退。在这张图里面，他举了很多实验证据告诉我说，确实人类有一些整体来说呢，人类有一些能力在减退，比如说导航的能力会因为那个电子大脑会减退啊，那记忆能力会因为Google 会减退啊，等等这些。那但是就是有些能力减退，我们也觉得无所谓，但是有一些可能有所谓，那我们要很小心的去选择哪些东西我们要好好的保持下来，然后我们要 AI 确定要帮我们做些什么事。
I'm now going to go a little bit faster, so we'll do a couple of slides at a time, just to speed up. What's wonderful is we can use our AI to help us measure the extent to which we are developing these sophisticated learning skills. If we take something like metacognition, which is much more complex than this slide suggests, but if we just look at a little part of metacognition, we can see how we can use digital traces. If we just look at that self-regulation row, the way that we can learn about the extent to which students are developing those all-important self-regulatory skills by looking at what they're doing digitally.
好，那就是我们现在就是在这几章里面，他是在谈到说，我们现在怎么样能够试着让AI 去这个了解我们的一些后设的认知的历程比如说运用这些数位的本质，可以帮助我们去了解说我们如何在做这个计划，如何在做这个自我调试，如何在做什么形式等等。
And I said earlier that one of the biggest challenges for all of us is not enough people understand about AI. So we absolutely need education programs to train staff to have a basic AI literacy. We don't need everybody to understand how to build AI. We don't need everybody to have a technical understanding of AI. We need some people to do that. But we do need everybody to understand what it can do, what it can't do, how to use it. And that's true for staff and students. And of course, there are very important policy-making activities that need to happen to make sure that institutions have in place the appropriate policies.
我们刚才也提到说，就是要让更多人了解或者学会怎么样来用 AI 是很重要的。那我们不需要让所有的人都知道怎么去设计个 AI、制作个 AI， 但是要让他知道他能够帮我们做些什么事啊。不管是老师也好，这个学校的职员也好，学生也好。这个我们都希望他们能够知道怎么样有效的来使用 AI。那另外就是学校制定怎么样的一个政策来导引这个 AI 的使用。
And I mentioned ethics at the start. And again, this is a freely downloadable resource that we produced through an initiative called the Institute for Ethical AI in Education. And it's a framework that can help people working in education make good decisions about how to bring AI into their educational practice and organisation from an ethical perspective.
那这个是他跟几位同事在英国，他们成立了一个一开始成立一个组织，这个组织现在已经有在运作了，但是他们就是产生了这个文件，就是在谈到说怎么样在组织当中或者在机构当中有效的来运用 AI， 然后有效的引进也是运用 AI 那这个文件也是免费可以 download
And it will take you through the various different objectives that you need to have in mind when you're bringing AI into education. So finally, if you're still with me, only a couple of slides to go, but this is important for school principals. So a couple of slides about strategy and that institutional level perspective. So it's great that you're having this event. This demonstrates to me that you already have sector leadership when it comes to thinking about AI. But every organization needs an AI strategy. And I think it's important to think about this in terms of the benefits that you can gain. And of course, making proportionate judgments about how to bring AI in. And indeed, to think about where it might bring you cost savings as well as effective teaching practices. And then, of course, this strategy around capacity building. Again, what you're doing today speaks to your appetite for this.
好，那所以这个部分就是对校长来说很重要，就是我们在做 AI 的领导的时候，我们怎么样让 AI 产生最大的这些功能呢？我们怎么样去让就是大家能够了解说 AI 能够给我们带来的这些可能的机会然后我们有什么样的策略来运用它，以及怎么样来增进我们的所有的成员对 AI 使用的能力。
And so it might be useful to think about it in these 4 ways. To think about governance and ethics. What are the parameters in which AI and EdTech will be explored, tested, and implemented? To think about which particular parts of your organization might be areas where AI can be most useful. And that decision might be informed by technology and data. Where do you have the technology? Where do you have the data? But then added to that, where do you have the staff capacity that understands the technology and can help you leverage AI in a particular unit of your organization so you can demonstrate its value? Because AI can be useful beyond teaching and learning. And then you can think of this as an iterative process. Each time you build a successful operational application of AI, you learn from it, you build capacity. You find the next place where AI, and then it feels less daunting. It can feel very daunting at the moment. So it's about breaking it up. You've got your overarching governance and ethics, but then you break it down into different units, looking at where you can make practical applications work, demonstrate the fact that they're working with other people, build capacity.
好，那这里就是他觉得在我们做这个AI 的领导的时候可以做的4件事情。那这4件事情就是你可能一开始的时候先有一个整体的这个政策的概念，然后接下来把它变成一个单位能够做个别的就是慢慢去发展它的使用，然后接下来就是在这个过程当中也让大家的能力不断的精进。那它是一个反复循环、不断精进的过程。所以我们在前面做的过程中，我们会学到一些经验，然后把这些经验就变成在下一个阶段继续推动的一些重点，所以它是一个整体循环的过程。
And these are just some resources that are helpful. The book isn't free, I'm afraid, and it is in English, but there are some free audio chapters you can listen to and various other resources at those links. But more than anything, I'd like to say thank you so much for listening to me. I'm sorry that was a little over time, but hopefully you will have had value from the extra minutes that I took.
最后那一页，你看提到了一些，其中下面那些连结都是免费的资讯，那上面的书当然是还是要卖钱的，但是这些部分希望对大家有个帮助。今天稍微时间超过一点，不过希望给大家带来丰富的内容。谢谢。